After spending a lot of time in the PSVR2 headset, messing with the settings and years of No Man's Sky experience, I think it's now time for a detailed review. No Man's Sky does not hold your hand, especially in VR mode, so making sure that you're wearing and have set up your PSVR2 correctly will make all the difference. When I first started in Expeditions VR mode, the game blew me away, and there is no way to convey that experience to you. And I've got to say, I truly love VR mode. And for those starting the game for the first time, they too will be amazed but might quickly be put off if they haven't changed the game's settings to offset that overwhelming experience. So before starting, please drop everything to the lowest settings. You can always change it later. And to underline that point, the footage you see now was more blurry than normal for me, all because the headset was too high in my head. A good habit to get into is to check the lens adjustment from the quick menu or before you start. There has been a lot of discussion about the PSVR2 graphics in No Man's Sky, and many people are having different experiences. That is partly to do with the settings, but also location. Yes, it is not as next gen as some would have hoped, and I can see that, but it is a vast improvement on PSVR1. And yes, some PC setups at the upper end would beat it. For the type of game that No Man's Sky is, an open galaxy survival sandbox, you can't compare it to the pure beauty of Horizon Call of the Mountain, a game map that, let's be honest, is very small. Or a medium-sized map game like The Village, an amazing port by the way. In No Man's Sky, when I wander around the world, I experience a blurriness, especially in the mid to long distance draw. I could reduce this with changes to the settings, but I have not worked out the optimal as of yet. And I wouldn't expect new players to even consider this. And even then, there will still be more blurriness compared to flat mode. But I do find some weird anomalies. Some items, like the trees in this bush, have more detail close up than they do in flat mode. But it tells me when the game has less rendering to do, there is more detail. And if there's more detail in VR mode, that means it potentially could be better than flat mode. This is also true at my very complex bases. The detail on those alien build parts is amazing. The green planters aren't too bad at this distance, but it does drop off the further back you go, like the moving engine at the back there. When I move back and look at the weird alien engine that I built, I know that it is extremely complex, and the blurriness that I see but you can't is to be expected. But I also know there's a feature that is part of the PSVR2 that will solve this. But here's another example first. From a distance, that fish tank is extremely blurry. The game is rendering the entire base around me, and to load it all, it's downscaling everything. But when I get really close, I can see more detail in that fish tank than I can in flat mode. In fact, the only way I think you could probably see that detail in flat mode is in photo mode. And here's the reason for this overly picky analysis, and it's for a good reason. If Halo Games had implemented eye tracking, foveated rendering, the fuzzy focus that people are experiencing, and what I'm experiencing by testing with these extreme examples, would simply not be a discussion. In fact, I'd go as far to say No Man's Sky would be a must recommendation for VR players, a standard for other games to match. And it is close with the size and scope as it stands. After all, there is no other game like it on the market. Even though the gameplay may be different to other open world games, it could become the standard that all open world VR games are measured by. But all we need really is the eye tracking. I've spent some time testing the exocrafts. I have a review guide on that coming soon, but what I want to do now is move on to flying. I've already done a review covering the best settings for flying. I also talk about how sharp the detail of the cockpit is. What I want to cover here is experience after you've made those adjustments. Personally, I have flown quite a few times, and I'm still adjusting to the truly exhilarating but terrifying experience. To zoom around on the planet is awe-inspiring, and as someone that is not a pilot, I can only guess how close it is or not to the real thing, but it feels real enough for me. There's still an issue with popping, but I think that will always be the case with an open world game. But ironically, I think eye tracking will also help when it comes to flying, because blurriness on the peripheral vision can only help but reduce motion sickness. In space, things get jaw-dropping. Once you set your location and start pulsing to the next location, simply looking out of the cockpit is surprisingly enjoyable, especially for part of the game that felt a bit boring in the past. And I will miss that feeling if it goes, but then again, I do have encounters and battles to look forward to. And as you can see, I still don't have the confidence to take on any battles in space, so the only thing to do is to dive into the space station for safety. Like a lot of game assets, the space station is sharper than wandering around a world. The detail is there, it's still a little bit blurry, and if I'm honest, I don't think it would take much to take that beyond flat mode. But my biggest gripe is the interface with NPCs. The pop-up menus are all over the place, and I'm sorry to bring this up if you haven't noticed, because you're going to notice now. Some are just simply too close to you, while others are perfectly fine. Storage containers? They're okay. The base terminal is perfect on point, but ironically it looks too small when you're not in VR mode. Wonder if the designers and programmers were double guessing themselves. For the refiners, if you stand too close you can't interact with the menu. So you have to step away for them to work correctly. I find that rather weird. Right, it's anomaly time, so let's call it in. As I enter the anomaly and experience another high point, I want to bring up a couple of more details. You can now rename discoveries in VR mode. It seems like a minor point, but it's the little things that make all the difference. Did I just utter a cliche? I did, didn't I? Oh, I feel so dirty. But a new feature that was added, but not to VR, was left and right-handed. I am surprised that that's not available to VR users. Maybe there's complexity in the coding and remapping the buttons, I have no idea. But hopefully that's another feature that will be added soon. When I get out of my ship, the anomaly is not as sharp as it is on the space station, but it's still a beautiful space. The Nexus UI may look small here, but it's actually perfect in VR. But the Quicksilver Merchant has the same problem that you'll find at the space station. Everything is simply too close. I had a lot of fun touching Polo. He told me personally he does like to have his chin scratched. But you can't get too close to other players. Sensible Rod approves, but Naughty Rod is very upset. All the bad things I could have done, all the shenanigans I could have got myself into, I feel personally attacked. Messing around the anomaly is a lot of fun. In fact, that's one of the great things about this game, is the messing around with friends. And it is great fun playing with Damash on a Tuesday. And in VR, it has taken it to another level, to the point where Waffy feels as though he's herding cats. And I've really got to wonder what the other players in the anomaly thought when they saw me running around. And I'm not going to admit how long I was doing it for, but there was one point I was running around the anomaly with my hands in the air as though the place was on fire. But back to some information. This main area, the details in the distance are quite blurry, but I want to go and have a closer look at the ships. They get sharper as I get closer to them. In fact, when I get quite close I can start to see the skin design, the artwork created by the game design team. In fact, I can get so close I can see the detail you'd only get if you zoomed right into an image. It would be a bit unfair for me to criticise that, but one of Hello Games' designers is watching this. It's going to drive them mad. Overly zooming someone's work always creates a mild panic, and sometimes triggers sweats too. But seriously, ships from a distance, from the correct distance, do look nice, and hopefully in the future will be the only way to look at them, hint hint. Something you can't do in flat mode is move your multi-tool over the edge to get better angles. Gunplay is going to be a lot easier and a lot more fun. And yes, you can melee strafe in VR mode. It is harder. Like flat mode, you have to move forward, jump and hit melee, but I'm not sure if the timing is slightly different, or I haven't got used to the button map yet on the new controllers. Either way, it can be done and it's just as fun, but don't forget, it can be deadly if done incorrectly. As I go outside to watch the sunrise, And before I get to the last few points, I will be covering more No Man's Sky PSVR2 stuff, and will update my reviews when I learn more and experience more. As for now, I am loving it, and I really do hope Hello Games implements some of the missing features as soon as possible. For those that have VR but not No Man's Sky, it is a great game to add to your collection, but don't worry, there is no rush, it will get better. And for those people that haven't got VR yet but love No Man's Sky, this isn't a you can't live without it moment. But when you hear they added foveated rendering, that will be the moment. In fact, those are the only two words that Sean should hear for the next few months. That and eye tracking, just to double down on the point. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Oh, and the bell thingy. And of course, thank you for watching. See you all later.